marketers to be engaged in the product development process.
Today I'm chatting with Julia Goldin, who holds the title of Chief Product and Marketing Officer at LEGO. That combination is not an accident. Goldin does more than just marketing. She's also responsible for creating LEGO play experiences and leads the team that creates the product portfolio. But she's also someone who thinks deeply about how marketing can actually enhance the product experience rather than just selling things. Before joining LEGO in 2014, she served as Global Chief Marketing Officer at Revlon. And prior to that, she worked with the Coca Cola company, rising to become Deputy CMO of Coca Cola Japan. It was there, at Coke, where she first developed a real taste for product innovation and its less than obvious connection to the marketing side of the house. Julia, one of the things that's interesting about how you define marketing is not just advertising. Marketing is not just getting people to buy stuff, though that's important. But marketing is now creating content that evokes desire. What do you mean by that, to create content that invokes desire as a marketer?
Thank you for having me here, and nice to chat with you, Ben. And what I see in the world today, and I think everybody sees that, is the fact that we have so many different platforms available to us. So when you're thinking about channels through which we connect with our consumers, they're much more immersive, and we have much more ability to be more personal, more connected, and more audience kind of oriented and audience focused. And so marketing is not as simple as creating an advertising campaign. I believe that we have an opportunity to really understand our consumer, really understand our audience, understand how they engage in their lives and what's important to them, and make sure that we connect with them through content that brings the product to life in a way that will be really meaningful. So if, for example, if I take a Lego set as an example and I talk about, Lego Star Wars, let's take that one. Star Wars is an amazing IP, and we know kids that really love Star Wars are completely into all kinds of different experiences related to Star Wars. Rather than just advertising the sets, what's really interesting is to be able to engage kids in short form content, to be able to showcase something to them that they haven't seen before, to be able to open up a window into designers that design Star Wars sets, to be able to engage them in a Star Wars game. So thinking holistically about how to create immersive experiences that will engage the audience, and tap into their passions. That's the huge opportunity that we today have in marketing, which we did not have, 20 years ago.
Well, and it's interesting because in marketing for LEGO, how do you think about your audiences? You have kids themselves, but parents are there too, and parents are presumably making the purchase for the kids. It's an interesting area. I have some background in marketing and children's books, where children's books has to appeal to the kids, but it also has to appeal to the parents as well. It might find something clever or funny that in the book that the child might not get. So how do you think about audiences? How do you evoke desire when you have maybe kids and parents at the same time that are stakeholders in the LEGO experience?
I think the first thing is that you need to know who you're designing the product for. And so we are very crystal clear about designing the product for kids and then segmenting it further into the kids with particular passion points, particular play needs, development in terms of age, etc. So the products need to tap into what kids are really going to want, because at the end of the day, they drive the wish list. So they need to be passionate about. But of course, we also are very, clear in understanding shoppers and parents, what occasions they're looking for, how they think about value, how we can help them to discover and navigate, to find the right product for their child if their child hasn't asked for something specific. So parents are a very important element of the whole kind of shopper journey. Let's start with that one. But parents are also a very important element of the whole journey, right? We believe that play is incredibly important for children. It's essential for their childhood and essential for their development. And parents are the window to open play for kids. So a big portion of what we do also with our brand communication and brand campaign is to communicate to parents about the importance of creativity in play and the importance of play as unlocking creativity, creative problem solving, helping their kids to develop 21st century skills. So that's kind of the first thing, is to get them really interested. Then it's about really helping them to navigate. How do they find the right product for their child? How do they know what their child, for example, would really appreciate and love? And then lastly, parents as mentors, as also people that we want to engage in the whole experience, because one of the unique things about the Lego brand and the Lego bricks and Lego play is that we do have a massive ability to bring kids and parents together, and parents can also play a role in helping their child to have the best possible experience. So parents are very important, but kids are kings and queens.
Okay, well said. And how do you think about then the impact that a brand like Lego can have? I know you've talked about that, the fact that Lego should be a big brand, like a big brand on the world stage. It's not just a toy company in terms of its impact. It makes toys, but you've even alluded to learning, creativity, development, but then even grander themes. How do you think about that? And how do you go about sort of increasing the size, the scope, the importance of Lego as a brand?
Yeah. So when I think about the Lego brand, I think of a brand that has a very clear mission of developing and inspiring the builders of tomorrow. So the first message and the key thing that we want to advocate for is learning through play and the importance of play. And basically sending a message to the world about, first and foremost, that kids need play in their life, and they need great and immersive play in their life. And play can really help to build all of these essential, what we call kind of essential 21st century skills. So we are very focused on activities that deliver that message. Take Lego Masters as an example. It's a great content that actually engages people in seeing and understanding what creativity can actually deliver. Or if you take our brand campaign from this year, where we celebrated our 90th anniversary, we really made that into a big moment of play, including creating a World Play Day to make sure that we actually engage parents and children and adults in play and reinforce the importance of play. So that's kind of the first really big message. Secondly, we are a brand that is a number one brand for kids, and we have a massive opportunity and I think a responsibility to make sure that we also address some of the big issues that I think for our society are going to be absolutely critical. So examples. Children today are growing up in a world where they're much more engaged from an earlier age about what that world needs to be. And the big things that we engage in would be things like supporting underprivileged communities. So, for example, Black community, 25% of everything we do goes to the Lego Foundation. It's our opportunity to support underprivileged communities and kids that are in crisis situations to ensure that we can bring play to their lives. Secondly, diversity and inclusivity, very important, because children are growing up in a world where we don't want children to feel marginalized by society. We want everyone to feel that they can realize the best of their potential. But there's still a lot of opportunity to do that, and to give kids an opportunity to see that everybody can find themselves, having a full opportunity to realize their potential. So we do that, for example, in our sets. We create. We have blind kids. We have we have people in wheelchairs, but active and being able to actually live an active life. We show genders in very non-traditional roles to reinforce the importance of gender diversity, but also, importance of giving people an opportunity, giving women an opportunity to do the things that they really want to do in their lives. So a lot of different things to really reinforce inclusivity in a very direct way, where they can see it in our sets and they can also see it in our marketing and in our content. Supporting LGBTQIA plus community is another very important element. And then, of course, also driving all very important efforts in terms of sustainability. So these are the things that we can do as a company, but there are also things that we can do as a brand and things that we can do as products. And that's where, we can immerse children in the world of play, but in a way that also educates them about the right kind of things and values and things that are important for their lives and for their future.
One of the interesting aspects of Lego's brand positioning is how firmly they align their brand to the value of creativity. A handful of Lego bricks don't just help you build things, but can ignite your creativity and change the way you see the world. But if your brand is meant to celebrate creativity, can you just deploy a run-of-the-mill ad? Or can you even use a traditional ad at all? The answer to this conundrum, according to Julia, lies in marketing via product experience, rather than just ads.
In your title and your job, you oversee not just marketing, but product as well, and in particular, product innovation. So, which isn't the case for necessarily a lot of CMOs. So how do you think about, how does that impact your role as a marketer? The fact that what you were just talking about, you might, have a role in making a product or a product innovation more inclusive, show maybe a non-traditional role for something to kind of show what's possible. How does that impact the fact that you wear both of those hats?
Well, I think I'm very privileged, and what happens, what my role allows me to do is to bring my team together so that we're not thinking linearly, between creating a product and then figuring out how to market the product, but product and marketing come together from the very beginning. So the process is very different, I think, from the sort of usual kind of linear process, and the engagement is very strong. So at the end of the day, I always believed in marketing being a real cross-section between art and science. You need to really understand your consumer. Really need to understand the data and the insights, but then there's also creativity that's involved in actually creating something that will surprise and delight them. And that's kind of that intersection is still really important when you're starting to develop products. But the power is that the marketers have a seat at the table from the very beginning. So it's not that I have designers that create products and then marketers that take it on and go figure out how to market them. It's marketing and design that sits together to figure out what are going to be the themes, what are going to be the really interesting trends, what are the things that we want to tap into, who is our audience, which passion points we want to bring to life. Then as the products get designed, you can start thinking holistically about content, about the different marketing levers that you might want to use, and the experience that you want to create. So marketing becomes much more around experience and content and not just straightforward advertising. So that's the big opportunity that I have because I have a team that works together.
And do people kind of stay in their own lane in these kind of sessions where, let's say it's early on in the development of product and marketers sort of say, here's an insight about, some social media listening we've done and other things. And they kind of talk about that. And the product people talk about their role, or does it all blend together? A marketer might have an idea for a product, and do you encourage that, or do you encourage people to kind of stay in their domain of expertise?
I see marketers as much more business owners, so I feel that they have full ability and opportunity, and actually it's part of their job to actually have a perspective on how to develop their product lines and how to tap in the audience that they're looking after. But designers also play a big role because they can bring more of a creative slant and look at things differently. And sometimes it's so the process is very symbiotic. People don't need to stay in their lanes; they need to work together as a team. That's the power. The power is in the team and the fact that people can bring different perspectives.
And what is an example of? I think underlying as you describe it, both the product side and the marketing side, underpinning both sides, really, it sounds like, is consumer insights, understanding the consumer, understanding their motivations, understanding their wants and needs and desires and benefits, what's their true motivation for a product. So given that, how do you bring that out? How do you you're a creative company by natures of the product you sell, but which kind of sounds a little bit right brain, but yet it's left brain based on data and insight. And how do you merge that into the process?
It's a very good question, but I think that's one of the things that I also feel is very unique is the fact that it is a combination of left and right brain. And I think the Lego experience itself, if I can just deviate for a second, is a left and right brain combination, right? Because on the one hand, it's a creative process, but on the other hand, it's also very logical, and you have to follow steps and think about, what might have gone wrong or how to fix things. The way that we do it is very simple. I mean, you need to understand your consumer. I don't think that's a left brain necessarily or a right brain inclination. It's just more that we really value data and understand. For example, kids, if I take kids, we don't design products by starting with, okay, boys and girls. We think about passion points and and play needs and the way kids build and what their different levels of experience are and how that might influence their play and engagement. And so it all starts with very rich understanding of the data that we have available, but also might do some other research to specifically dive into a particular passion point that we want to understand. Then the process starts. So part of it is logical, of course. You see the data, you understand who you're going to go after. But part of the creation is also being able to create things that don't exist today. And that's the creative process. So that's how the two things come together. And it's never that one part of the brain switches off. Because even as you're developing products, we do a lot of testing of our products to understand how kids or how the audience that they are designed for relate to them early on, how they relate to the play experience, but also how they view the product and how interested they are in it. So part of it is qualitative, part of it is quantitative, and we need to be able to embrace and understand both. That's how the process kind of iterates. But we also do a lot of things to promote creativity and just give people an opportunity to continuously stay inspired, both externally but also internally. So for designers, for example, we sometimes do creative boosts at least a couple of times a year where they can just take 1 week and design whatever they want on a particular brief. And that's kind of a very quick way without any insight, just get the stimulation of your own creativity.
Well, and how does it, we've focused on, motivations, needs, wants, desires of individual kids, parents, families at kind of a micro level. How do macro and cultural and other events have a factor here in terms of, I mean, you've had for a number of years now, the Rebuild the World campaign from Lego, and talk about that, but obviously that maybe takes a different meaning after something like the pandemic we've been going through or other kind of like socioeconomic cultural events worldwide. How does that kind of influence both products and marketing aside from the individual needs of a kid and a family as well?
Very important. It's really important to also be topical and to be relevant. We also do a lot of work just with the brand to make sure that our brand taps into the moments of culture that are, unique and relevant and important. We also collaborate with other creators. So at a global scale, you're constantly looking for, one, which are going to be the seminal cultural moments that you want to be part of. Then secondly, what are who are the, creators or, partners that you would want to work with from a grand, scheme of things, who are also doing a lot of work and connecting in a very culturally relevant way. So that, shapes a lot of what we do in terms of our brands and in terms of our brand, in terms of the Lego brand, but also in terms of the choices that we make, even for our internal IPs, for our IP partners. And, so for example, what are going to be the hot movies? What are going to be the hot properties? Who are the people, influencers that we might want to work with? Who are the brands that we may want to collaborate with? And these are the kinds of things that are shaped by our culture and society around us. And part of it is, of course, also tapping into moments that are not so nice for society, but moments that require brands to act.
Well, and how does, I mean, in looking at your background, one brand that does a really good job of being culturally relevant, that you had a career, I think a 13-year career at Coca Cola, which included all different levels of company, but also being the deputy CMO for Japan. That's a brand that is culturally relevant. Yet, if you just looked at their product, it's a drink. It's something refreshing, tastes good. It doesn't necessarily need to be. But for Coca Cola, what do you take from that experience, marketing Coca Cola, that you deploy now at Lego on how you are culturally relevant? That goes beyond maybe what your actual like product delivery or benefit is by the size of your brand and its impact on the world stage.
Yeah, it was a great lesson for me. It was really like, for me, brand academy. Because Coke is, like you said, it's just a drink. But Coke felt, and I've read archives actually of the legendary CEO of Coke, Robert Woodruff. But, Coke felt the responsibility, to be also part of the fabric that unites the world, part of the fabric that stood for peace, for togetherness. And it established itself that way and did a lot of iconic things through the years to make these statements, like, supporting Olympics and World Cup, like putting a massive first sort of sign in the middle of Piccadilly Circus in London, because it was the heart of Europe after the war and they wanted to be there. Like doing, of course, I Want to Buy the World a Coke, in the middle of early 1970s with a lot of, very, revolutionary spirit and problems the U.S. was experiencing. These kinds of iconic statements were very important. And what I learned when I worked at Coke is that you can't rely on those statements, right? Each generation of marketers has a responsibility to leave the legacy of the brand very strong. So I had to work on figuring out how to be relevant in the world that I was in at the time that I was, had the opportunity to take care of the brand. And it did require really understanding consumers, really understanding what was important to them, and really tapping into the moments and experiences that were, the highlights for their life, and really brought to life this idea of togetherness, like football that, brings everyone together, like music that brings people together and allows them to express themselves. So that was sort of my experience with Coke. And I learned that kind of, continuous focus on building the brand that is much bigger than just the product. And I think of Lego in a very similar way, in a sense that, of course, we have amazing array of products, and some of them are actually really, really big. But as a brand, we surpass any individual product and really stand for the importance of creativity, the importance of play, the importance of creative expression, creative problem solving, and supporting inclusivity in terms of, just giving everybody the ability to be a confident creator. And I think that legacy is much bigger than any individual product.
Coca-Cola has an interesting place in the marketing pantheon. Why should a flavored beverage regularly stand in the middle of historic events and connect the world with its iconic glass bottle? It's because the brand has drawn a line in the sand and said, it stands here. And over time, and with continual reinforcement, that line becomes a permanent landmark and the foundation of the entire brand's reason for being. Interestingly, Julia took this masterclass with Coke and then said that Lego deserves the same.
Well, firstly, we have a very important principle, which is that if we choose and decide to tap into a social issue, we do it with action, not with words. Because, during Black Lives Matter, as an example, a lot of brands said something. But saying something doesn't really help society as much as doing something. So we actually acted, we donated, pledged a donation of money through Lego Foundation to support Black Lives Matter and support particularly kids in underprivileged Black communities. So that was a very important element of it. And I would say, that's kind of a very important, lens that we have on specific social issues. We want to do things that will actually really help society, not just talk about the fact that these issues are important. So if you're going to talk about diversity, we're actually doing things in our sets, in our marketing, to actually actively engage diverse communities and help people to feel that they are included. For example, We can talk about diversity and inclusivity. We have launched Braille bricks for blind kids for them to help them to learn Braille, but also audio building instructions to help blind kids to be able to build. We represent kids and adults in different situations in our sets, whether they have a limb disability or whether they have, another type of disability. It's very important to help to show that people can have, very active lives, but we need to show that to kids because kids recognize themselves, they see themselves in these sets, and they feel much more confident and supported. And so action is very important if you want to stand for big social issues. That would be kind of the way that we think about that. So that's one thing. And secondly, of course, when you tap into cultural trends, I think you need to be very choiceful about the kinds of collaborations that you create and the way that you tap into the different, into different cultural trends, because doing too much is also not great for brands. You have to be really choiceful and do things that will stand out, make a statement, get people to be excited, but it's better to do a few things that are really big rather than do a lot of things everywhere.
Well, and of course, it's one thing to do it within a country or an area or a region, right? Like Black Lives Matter was based in the U.S. and there's a set of sort of cultural norms and assumptions that you can key in on. But Lego is a global company. Coca Cola, when you work there, is of course a global company. And your background is even interesting because you're based in London in the UK. You spend time in Denmark. You're originally from St. Petersburg, Russia. As part of your sort of geographic regions across your career, it looks like you were in charge of Northwest Europe, but also we're in charge of Japan at different points. How do you think of that overall? What crosses cultural divides? What translates? Do you geographically localize campaigns in ways? How do you make sure that it's accepted in the attended way when you're a global brand?
I think there's something very powerful about having a strong global brand with strong global statements. So when we design global brand campaigns, we do make sure that they can transcend borders and be relevant everywhere. But then the power of big brands and the power of the opportunities that we have today as marketers is to be able to connect on a very personal level and to be relevant to our consumers around the world and to be able to take it down to the local culture and tap into the local culture and in a relevant way. So if I just take an example of China, we have, all of our brand global campaigns resonate in China and they run in China very successfully. And we have a global portfolio that also performs extremely well there. But for China, we also design specific programs that tap into Chinese customs. Like, for example, we have a theme called Monkey Kid that particularly taps into the history or very, let's say, very traditional and very well-known journey of the Monkey King. We create great products for Chinese New Year to celebrate it, and of course create campaigns to do that. And we would do that in different cultures to celebrate the cultures that that are there to be relevant. So I think there's certain things that need to happen at global level, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing locally relevant things as well. I think some things are very important to also make a nod in a relevant way to the local culture and to be able to adapt. To be relevant to consumers.
And what is an example of an insight about the consumer? Maybe it's localized, maybe it's more global, that led directly to an immersive campaign. I'll give you one from our background. We're a global marketing agency. We do a lot of work for Budweiser. And so we had an insight that we did from market research that people drinking a Budweiser are more chatted up at bars. That basically they're seen as more friendly than if they're drinking a Heineken or a competitor like that people are going to approach and talk to them. So we actually did a campaign around what your drink says about you. And based on if you're in the bar, what are you communicating? What are people assuming about you? Because we want to bring out the message that, people think you're more genuine and authentic and friendly, a good person to have a beer with if you're drinking a Budweiser rather than a competitor. That's one example. Is there an example of like a consumer insight or a cultural insight that led itself to a campaign more directly that you wouldn't have done otherwise if you didn't have the insight?
I think a good example that maybe is just very topical, but what we acted very fast during COVID, because when we experience now, in hindsight, we can understand what it was. But then imagine like everybody's in a lockdown and what happens. And so we had a big insight about the fact that it was a time where families were, the positive thing was that the families were able to come together. And so we did a campaign very quickly. It was all social media campaign, but it was called Let's Build Together. And it was tapping into that insight that, as a parent, it's very difficult to have, when your children are educated at home, it's really tough, and you want to get joyful moments to just kind of be able to create great moments for families to, especially at that time that it was very challenging and insecure for a lot of people. So we did Let's Build Together campaign that was not based on selling any product, but activating the bin of products that you already had and giving people ideas and creating movement around it. So that was one example of a campaign that was really built based on an insight and created a lot of followership, and engagement, because people started to share content of what they were doing. They were inspiring other people. But I really do believe that we brought joyful moments to many people who were under a lot of stress, during that time. And then another campaign I will use is our work with adults. So we did a work to understand. Adults have always been part of the Lego portfolio. There's some adults, we call them adult fans of Lego, that have always been very engaged with us, but it was a very small proportion. And we kind of had a hunch that there's a lot more adults that would love to build with the Lego bricks, and that could be a really positive way to engage adults. And as well as then, adults are massive influences for kids, so of course also engage kids. And we did a lot of research to understand, what adults were into, and it was very clear that many adults, I would say majority, always want to find moments of meditation, moments of kind of internal, or moments for themselves where they can do something that can also make them feel really good, bring in moments of self-esteem and self-reflection. And based on that, we, investigated what are the different passions that they would want to engage in and build a portfolio of products that really taps into different passions that adults have. But the campaign that we created around it is called Joyful Focus campaign. And it was all about these short moments of joyful focus to just, take time out and just build the set that you really always wanted to build. And that was really successful because I think it tapped into a zeitgeist of, the world today that is so fast, so unpredictable, that we all need more and more to take a little bit of time for ourselves to kind of, to create those moments of setting ourselves and focusing on something that will take our mind away from all the things that are happening around us. So that was very, topical, very successful, and very good at engaging more and more adults in our portfolio.
The interesting thing about Julia's background is the link between product innovation and innovative marketing. Two roles that aren't usually combined. But are they really that different? Great product innovation starts with consumer insights. Innovative marketing starts with consumer insights too. Great product innovation addresses the core needs and underlying motivation of our audience. Great marketing certainly does that too. So where does product innovation stop and innovative marketing begin?
If Coke was the brand academy, then Revlon was about innovation and product innovation, because product innovation doesn't just happen like you bring people together. It's a process. It needs, it has got stage gates. If you want to have innovation, it takes time. And you need to really plan a pipeline of innovation. So part of it is really just understanding how the innovation process works. And secondly, to be able to also understand how to create innovation with more long-term, on a more longer-term horizon that will have potentially, more challenging functionalities or more challenging aspects of the product that you need to take more time to create. So that's one big part of innovation. And then another big part of innovation is around this ability to kind of iterate and continuously raise the bar in terms of how you're going to create the right products for your consumer to really evoke desire. Because, cosmetics are a lot of people ask me, Lego and Revlon cosmetics and toys are so super different. They're not that different. I think one big similarity is the fact that both businesses are very reliant on novelties. And the reason that is the case is because we don't serve needs, we serve desires. You can never, if you ask a woman, does she have enough pair of shoes or does she have enough lipsticks? Or, it's no one's ever going to say, yes, I've got, you always want to look for something new because that's what gives us a sense of self-esteem, puts a smile on our face. That novelty factor, doesn't happen by accident. You need to create that desire. And it's the same with toys. Kids have a lot of toys, but every year they want something new. And just because they bought last year doesn't mean they'll buy again this year. So the bar is high. And so understanding how the product innovation process works, making sure that you have the right conversations at every stage gate so you can create based on real insights, that you have a good funnel that you can go through that can then turn into a pipeline that you can refine toward the finish line. These are the kinds of things that I've learned when I did my job at Revlon.
Well, and do you recommend for a CMO that doesn't really have that purview of product or product innovation? They're not normally. Do you recommend that CMO tries to educate himself or herself, or sort of be available part of that, be a resource, or try to bring that knowledge in, even if it's in an informal way, into their sort of a purview or scope?
Absolutely. I think it's really important. And as I said, I think product and marketing, separating them creates a very linear and very outdated approach, in my view. I think that this co-creation is super important. So I would definitely encourage marketers to be engaged in the product development process, to understand what's being developed and how, and also to understand the limitations as well as the opportunities that the product development process of a particular company has. I see a lot of benefit in it. And as I said, in my organization, there's definitely alignment, transparency, and teamwork connected to developing products, which I think results in a significantly better experiences for our consumers and also more effective.
Well, and finally, kind of to wrap up, I mean, you've talked a lot about not just marketing for sort of functional benefits, but marketing for desires and having a more way to kind of inspire those desires. How important is doing that in a moment of time? What I mean by that is I see Lego on World Play Day. That's a moment. That's a moment where we come together and there's kind of a focus on it. How important is it to kind of focus in time for this relevant moment where you can get your message across? And how do you think about time as a dimension in all of it?
I think time has two aspects to it. I think one, there's a moment in time where people are really engaged. So if they're really engaged in, for example, International Women's Day, more people are attuned to the aspect of women, girls. International Girls' Day is very similar. That's a very good time to engage people in the conversation around the gender play gap that exists between girls and boys, because they don't have the same opportunities that boys do, and actually serve up opportunities to engage more parents in, getting more play opportunities for their girls. That's a moment in time. However, there's also moments across time that happen in a micro level. And I think as a big brand, you need to be able to also be relevant in a moment. So when things happen, we need to be able to respond, especially when you have a massive level of engagement with your consumers. We have a very high level of engagement in our own channels, in our earned channels. Our Lego YouTube is the biggest branded channel, as an example. So you can't just be pushing your messages out. You have to be able to respond to what is trending, to respond to how consumers, what is interesting and important for your consumers, and ultimately to respond to what they're in, the moment they're in. And that's why we did the Let's Build Together campaign during COVID, because we could see what was trending. No, so I would say be very selective about the big moments to make sure that you can be really relevant and action something in those moments, but then also ensure that you can relate to the small moments that happen every day.
And as a final question, what is your superpower? With all of this, you wear many hats. You've worked at different brands. You've managed large organizations. What is your superpower, and where do you see your career headed after this? What would you still like to do and accomplish?
I think we still have such an amazing opportunity to touch more and more children and adults in a very relevant and engaging way. And I think I have so much passion when I see the sparkle in people's eyes and when they tell me how much enjoyment they got out of the last Lego set that they built. That I really want to continue, because I can see an opportunity to do more, and we still have a big, big role to play in helping so many children around the world. So that's how I see the future. And in terms of my superpower, it's very difficult to nail one particular point, but maybe I would say versatility has been very important because in two levels. One is I am very balanced right and left brain, and I can move between the art and science. And I think that has always really helped me in kind of the more sort of like how to develop the portfolio, how to think strategically and commercially, but at the same time, leave room for a lot of creativity. But I think the second thing in terms of versatility is appreciation of diversity, being able to work in different cultures, appreciate different cultures and what different people can bring, and the power of a team that is diverse, and ability to deal with difficult situations and take risks. I've done it all my life.
For Julia Goldin, marketing isn't the cousin of sales, it's the sister of innovative products. So don't just sit on the sidelines with the product team. If you want to be a great marketer, you'll need to tap into consumer insights to truly understand the experience you deliver and market to your audience's underlying motivation. Evoke desire. The desire to explore, the desire to create, the desire to experience, and yes, the desire to purchase. Julia says tap into dreams, create trends, responds to other people's trends, and bring creativity to life. If you build your next marketing campaign brick by brick, or Lego by Lego, you might just bring a little extra joy to your industry and indeed to the world. For Top CMO, I'm Ben Kaplan.